are awaiting a meeting of the Debt Commission. Less than an hour from now, members of this bipartisan panel will gather again to address a problem some insist even threatens U.S. national security. Even though many of the group's recommendations are getting widely criticized, our next guest says we have got to do something right now or we're facing a fiscal meltdown. Republican Senator Gregg of New Hampshire joins us. Senator, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Shannon. Appreciate being on.
I've seen your comments that this is a threat to the U.S., second only to a weapon of mass destruction. Explain.
Well, basically, other than a terrorist using a weapon of mass destruction against us, nothing is going to do more damage to our culture, our prosperity, and our security than an economic meltdown as a result of us going into what amounts to fiscal bankruptcy, which is where we're headed. I mean, basically, our debt is rising so fast as a result of these massive deficits that we're incurring today and which are projected to be incurring for the next 10 years, $1 trillion a year over the next 10 years on average, that we will simply get to a point at some time, and it's going to be sooner rather than later, when people will lose confidence in our money and be unwilling to buy our debt at a reasonable price. And at that point, you're going to have a massive implosion of our economy, and it'll have a devastating effect on a lot of Americans.
Senator, you and others have been raising the cry on this for years. Do you think people actually get it? We're being asked to make a lot of sacrifices based on what's come so far from the Debt Commission and the secondary commission. Those aren't set in stone just yet. But what we know involves a lot of sacrifice. Do people get it, that that's what it's going to take, do you think?
Well, I think that's what this last election was about. I've never seen the American electorate speak with such definitiveness, and I think what they were saying, and I don't think there's any question about this, is stop the spending, get the deficit under control, reduce this debt, and make our nation prosperous again, and don't pass on to our kids a country they can't afford. So I do think the American people get it. Whether the message has been effectively delivered here in Washington is still, the jury's out on that. I mean, the Debt Commission, the chairman of the Debt Commission, put together a very serious proposal, which was significant. It wasn't global, but it was significant. It left out some areas I would want to have addressed. And it got panned by a lot of people on the left, especially. The Speaker of the House said it was a non-starter. That's inexcusable. I mean, that's just burying your head in the sand, and we really can't afford that as a nation.
I mean, the proposals that we've seen thus far would ask for a lot of sacrifice from both sides of the equation. People who do not want to see any taxes raised and people who don't want to see entitlements cut at all. Are they going to be able to meet in the middle? You mentioned House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's comment. Is there some common ground? Will there be?
There has to be. There has to be. Either you're going to do this now in an orderly way, or you're going to do it in the middle of a financial crisis of inordinate proportions. And it'll be much more painful if you have to do it then. So yes, there has to be. And it does, everything does have to be on the table. But remember, the primary driver of this problem is the growth of the federal government. It's gone from its historic levels of about 20% of GDP, which we've had as a size of the government since the end of World War II. This year, in the last 2 years, it's gone up to 24% of GDP. It's headed to 27 or 28% of GDP. We simply can't afford this explosion in the size of the government. And it means you're going to have to make tough decisions on the spending side of the ledger, not only in the discretionary accounts, including national defense, but also, and more importantly, on the entitlement accounts, which benefit a lot of people and which people are very sensitive about.
Senator, I want to ask you about a couple of ideas that have been floated by various members of the Deficit Commission and get your reaction. The idea of a 6.5% national sales tax. What do you think? Really
bad idea. Really, really bad idea. I mean, basically that's punting the ball, saying we simply raise taxes dramatically and go to basically a European social welfare system where you have a government that's 28% of your economy and you try to pay for it with every tax you can think of. A national sales tax isn't solving this problem. It's basically saying we're going to accept a massive expansion of government well over what the historic size of government has been in this country. I would be very much opposed to that.
Okay, what about raising the amount of income that can be taxed by Social Security payroll taxes, increasing the amount that would be eligible for that tax?
Well, you have to have a comprehensive Social Security proposal which addresses both the benefit and the revenue side, so that should be in the mix. Not necessarily, I'm not endorsing what the Commission proposal was, but clearly that has to be on the table as part of a Social Security fix. So that you make that system solvent for the next 50 to 75 years.
All right, strict pay-as-you-go rules. If you propose an entitlement, if you propose a tax cut, being able to show there in Washington you have a way to pay for it before it's passed.
Absolutely. The problem, of course, here in Washington is that we waive pay-go every time we try to enforce it. I made I think, 20 different pay-go points of order against spending bills that came to the floor of the Senate in the last year as ranking member of the Budget Committee. Every one of them was waived. Every one of them. $290 billion of spending since we passed the enhanced pay-go rules has occurred, which violated the enhanced pay-go rules by this Congress. It's unbelievable.
Yes, Senator,
and as a very practical matter, the enforcement mechanism is going to have to be something better than pay-go to make it work.
We know it's a hard habit to break. Senator, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.